And obviously, again, the law of averages doesn't apply. Our ability to kind of break it down into the data, the context, and therefore avoid some of these pitfalls is extremely critical in delivering the right. Building a model is easy today, but it's kind of delivering the right context is extremely challenging. And de-averaging is a new word that I've learned in the past few years. It's like breaking down what you would typically see as one chunk and treating components and modeling around that is greatly improving our ability to kind of deliver to the expectations our clients have today. Okay, so the first 3 points I quickly kind of ran through was more about how we look at data, how we form our thoughts, how we analyze the data, and how do the engines get set up to kind of do what it has to do. But the analytical work doesn't stop at just doing these. It's not just delivering the results, but how do business users take this information and put it to use is extremely critical for any successful implementation of analytics. I'm sure you've heard that in many sessions across today. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on the business user focus and what we do in that space. Right? Okay, so here is again a question to check whether everybody is awake at 3:30 p.m. So here is a driver and there's a number that says, that's the sensitivity. Which driver is larger? So somebody who says the first one is larger, please raise hands. The impact on business or outcome, right? It's saying that, okay, if you want further description, it says for every percentage change in the driver of inputs, the expected outcome on sales is, let's say, some number, which is the numbers you see here, 0.8% and 5%. A raise of hands to say which is a bigger effect on sales of a brand, right? That's really the question I'm asking. A raise of hands who believe first one is the larger effect. A raise of hands, please. Okay, say about 25% of the room, and raise of hands to say pricing is the larger effect. Slightly larger. And anybody who doesn't have an opinion wants the answer from me?
I think it depends on the product.
Yes and no, but I would argue against that. That's again for questionnaire. It's not so nebulous, okay?
We don't know whether the driver is being studied in isolation or together with multiple other drivers.
Let's assume they're all being studied and we are doing proper multivariate analysis, okay? No simple correlations, complex stuff, okay? Okay, that's a longer discussion. We'll come back, but just let's stick to my question, right? So I've. Which is all fine. I'm just saying, my question is simple. I mean, all intelligent people, thank you very much. My question is very simple. It's saying which is larger. So we have divided opinion. In my opinion, and I see some team members of mine here smiling. In my opinion, 0.8 is larger than 5%. And I'll tell you why. Obviously it's a trick question. I'm here standing up and presenting, and I have to catch you somewhere, right? So bear in mind that many of the frameworks that we use today is limited by the data and the technique also. So what you read out of it and what you measure are very different things. So just to kind of give you a context, 5% is nothing extraordinary in the modeling context that we create, and it's like expected. If 5% is there, I expect it, right? But if it is 0.8%, it's like 2.5 times the average. So we know here is a brand that's extremely advertising sensitive, just to kind of illustrate, right? But if you kind of look at this number like I did in my earlier slide in isolation, and we have done this mistake and we've learned from the mistakes, I'm just trying to kind of illustrate that. First few presentations I made in life, I said price is the biggest effect, right? So the idea is very simple. If we don't understand the technique and the data that went in to kind of give you this outcome, we will all make incorrect assessments and incorrect recommendations, right? So questions for question time, right? Okay, so I'm just moving on. Somebody will start hitting the buzzer soon, right? So what I'm trying to kind of leave behind as a thought is, yes, techniques exist. Multiple techniques can zero in and give you great fancy answers. But it's also important to understand and interpret it correctly. And that's where what we call as meta-analysis needs to be a decision and a thought quite upfront. Saying, how do we make sure that we are going to say the right things? What should we compare it against? And is there a set of rules that we can create so we don't trip and fall on the data that we create, right? So that's just a thought for all of us, right? And I think the other thing that we've done and we believe that works is to democratize access to the findings and the data and everything that we think is complex that the other people won't understand. Obviously, we have a job of simplifying it, but once simplified, make it accessible, right? So, and again, if there's a reading problem, this is like a cartoon that I picked from somewhere, the source is there. Somebody is asking for a decision like I did, and everybody is saying yes, that's what you see at the bottom. But everybody in their minds is saying, you got to be kidding, so on and so forth. So there's nobody agreeing, but because it's a forum and everybody has to kind of, conform to reality, then they're saying yes, right? Well, this is true in some cases, but when you democratize and put it in front of everybody, put it on scrutiny, life is very different. And this is really what happened. This is just illustrative of what happened with us. But that's really what I'm trying to tell you. Saying the first time, for many of the models we create, we need to take forward-looking views of how life will be 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line. One of the decisions we ask our customers to come back and tell us is, do you expect to raise prices for your brand, right? So we're saying, are you going to increase prices by 5%, 10%, 30%, whatever that number is? We want them to give it to us because we're creating a scenario for the future, and we need to have a view of what decisions the brand team is going to take, right? So we've had answers like, oh, somebody will say, oh, I'm not going to increase price. Somebody says, no, the input prices have gone up, so we'll be shooting up price by 10 or 12%, right? So that's really what everybody publishes the first time. Somebody says 5, somebody says 12, somebody says none. So the red says it's really something that did not happen once you go back, once you go forward and look back, right? But as you kind of put this result and saying Sunder said this and somebody else said this and somebody else said this, people now make really considered decisions. So by the time you reach a third or a fourth round, as you forecast, say this is what the scenario is, this is what the model is recommending, based on the inputs I've taken from you, based on inputs I have created, based as forecasts and so on and so forth, there is a fairly self-correcting mechanism that kicks in. So people look at it and say, okay, this guy is going to put my name against my number, so let me think about and do a careful assessment and give a number. So they do a little more homework. So the idea is to say, how do we harness knowledge about market, category, brand, context that is probably more available with the people running the business, but we as analysts come with what the data tells us, give some context around. Unless these two come together, you don't really make good decisions, right? So the idea is to kind of say, can we democratize access, not just the data, what everybody says, and this is what, some of us would call as the Delphi method. We're saying take opinion polls and say 5 experts say something and that's going to be the trend. This is Delphi in a slightly different manifestation and saying publish it, make it visible, and also capture reasons why people said so. So people can assess and say, okay, these are the situations in which something may change or may not change, right? So ingredients of our success is obviously, there's a lot happening under the roof. That's all the analysis and stuff like that. But we actually make information data accessible in many branches. It all goes out of a core platform that we have built. Obviously, the benchmarks, the stuff I spoke about with the 0.8% and the 5% and help people interpret, make their own views on the numbers. Simulators in saying that you change this, change that, what is going to be happening in the future. Prediction is our own neck on the block in saying that if these are the inputs and these are the assumptions, these are the numbers we're going to forecast for the sale in the next 3 months, or how the box office would open and so on and so forth, right? There are exception reports. Obviously we capture macro environment information that people can look at and form their own thoughts. And obviously there's a visual data story layer in saying that if there is lots of data, how do you make it accessible is a constant endeavor that we kind of keep doing. If you look at the visual layers we've built on the platform, we're probably on version 6 of what we've built. We kind of, continuously evolve. But the idea is to say democratize data and make sure that the decision makers have access, have visibility to who said what, and have an ability to form their own opinion in an easy and an intuitive way. And that's really for me, the gold standard in terms of what we would like to achieve with our platform. If you ask whether we've kind of attained that nirvana state of the platform, I think we are still far away. But we at least know what elements work and what don't, and we're constantly innovating and changing that, right? Okay. So measure and course correct is like the Delphi context I showed you, right? So for every piece of work that we do, in the good old days it was a project, somebody paid us and we came back next year. So now we insist and say that we'll stick on with you. There is obviously some money you pay us for that. But the idea is to say we forecast and we learn and we kind of refine and get to a finer point of the forecast and make the real time actually work. And that's part of the journey as well. Real time is not just about the technology, the tech stack, the data and the model, but also in how we kind of make sure that the knowledge on the table, not necessarily modeled, gets to the decision making point and how we are able to fine tune and get to that, reduce the gap between what you forecast and what actually happened. And that's continuous process. So with those thoughts, obviously, I've just, nothing new I'm sure with the 6 ingredients. I've tried to kind of illustrate it with the journey that we have taken and kind of say what we have done, what challenges we've faced, given you a flavor of 1 or 2 instances of how we have solved those problems, right? That's really the attempt and that's all probably I can achieve in 15 or 20 minutes. So both these are living clients for us and obviously I can't publish numbers. The first client, is probably saving or getting better value in the tens of millions. The second one is still a large customer. It's a US centered studio. They're also saving tens of millions, right? But the idea is to say that how do we get decision making enablement in a faster, smarter way. And in my mind that's real time. We also do the real time stuff, which is saying data comes in every second and I can do something with it, I can report something, we can do all that. But I don't think that's really the crux of decision making or value generation in a marketing context. In some narrow sense, yes, but in the broader sense, it's about decisions that you can make that can be sustained and the value can be added for our customers. Right? So, thank you. So that's really what I had. I rushed through some of that. I was just looking at everybody's faces and said, is this guy making sense or not? I hope I connected, but happy to take questions. I can go back to any slides as well. I skipped some examples more in the interest of time. I can go back, I can speak about it. There's lots more I can speak about that I can show, so feel free to ask questions. Right. Yes, I have 5 minutes. Okay, as many questions in 5 minutes. So we'll go with her first. She had some major disagreements with me.
No,
yes,
I didn't have any major disagreement except
okay.
that I work in workforce analytics space, so I believe everything needs to have a very time-sensitive description around the questions you ask data.
Yeah.
And I felt in the initial slides that specificity was my major disagreement with what you were showing. How we analyze stuff is it's either a period of time that you're analyzing, it's the starting point, or it's the ending point. And I felt that is that's a missing piece of information you could add to the question to make them more specific.
Sure. Point taken. No debates. Yeah.
My question to you essentially is to understand real-time predictive analytics and real-time predictive modeling. How do you apply it in workforce analytics context? Especially if you look at the use cases, you're trying to build an always-on platform which every digital data stream is being captured, and you're trying to predict who's going to leave, who's going to stay. There is a cadence to the use case specific challenges.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, either you can sit in or I'll take a minute. People who want to walk out, feel free to, but then nobody is able to hear what she is speaking. So we'll just give 30 seconds. People who want to step out, by all means, feel free. Yeah.
So I was describing in workforce analytics, we have 3 specific, ways in which we capture predictive modeling. One is an always-on case, like I talked about digital data streams. The second is use case specific, which is, once in a lifetime, you'll probably analyze people who have the leadership potential and can be, part of the succession management program. And then there are those that, require more periodic intervals, which are, less longer. Say about every 2 months, every 3 months, you do a skill analysis or a learning needs assessment. How do you sort of translate always on or real-time predictive analytics in the HR space?
See, I'll try to kind of make sense in the marketing context, right? All these paradigms exist. I'm no expert in your field, right? If you take the digital, the context, you want to know what is the next best advert to buy, and that's a decision by the second, right? But if you're saying I want to take an underlying new positioning, kind of decision in the market, it is once in a blue moon, right? Saying I'm going to launch a product which will, kind of meet these needs is not an everyday need. And there's quite a bit in between, and saying that I'm running my next campaign or I'm running a promotion, I have to price for an SKU that I'm launching with some ingredients in it. These happen more in, kind of regular intervals, right? So while I showed you some examples here, each of these will have to take different analytical forms. The first one really is, extremely real time, connected to real data. Probably we work with a very large US retailer and their digital activity. There are billions of rows of information coming in. And we're saying we're trying to understand what path people take to kind of reach the retailer's portal, right? So that happens in real time. So in your case, I would suspect, I don't know, but I would suspect there's nothing that urgent, right? Even your real-time context is maybe every day or every week, right? So there it is more like how we are managing the box office, saying that what's trending, in your case might be what is the major reasons for somebody, your organization or an organization losing people. Those are the kind of things that you will kind of do in the middle. So select the KPI, select the appropriate method, right, is all I'll say. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you had a question, please. And you had as well, we'll come back. Yeah.
So what is your definition of real time when you develop that CPG model? What is the interval level of data you guys use?
See, in the CPG context, I was just explaining to her, we have models that run every day.
Okay.
In the digital context and saying what is the better advert to buy, for example.
Okay,
right?
but in CPG, right? So
in the examples I showed you, a latency of 1 quarter is going to kill no one.
Exactly,
right?
because in CPG retail domain, right? In marketing mix models and all, data is available at quarterly level because you need to have all those TRP and GRP level data, right? So here then your real time should be at quarterly level.
Yeah, that's why I said let the problem define what real time means.
Okay.
And not because you have data, you will kind of churn out saying change price every day. It cannot happen, right? But to kind of say that the world is changing for CPG as well,